How do we know what God's will is for us? I'm going to talk about that a little bit. Not that I'm an expert, but I'm going to just share my perspective and some stories with you. But in the meantime, if you can, it would help if you subscribed, shared, and commented on this video. So, like I said, I am not an expert in trying to figure out God's will. But I've had a lot of experience trying to figure it out and trying to understand it, trying to interpret it. And I've shared in other videos, job changes, houses, marriage, children, what's going on with Karen's health, all of those different things. And it's not always easy to see. And I think I've talked to a number of people. Wouldn't it be easier if you need to make a decision on something, or, you need to make a change, and you're driving down the road and there's a billboard, or you get a phone call, or there's a sign, or a good friend just kind of walks up and says, this is what you should do. Now, what's funny is sometimes that happens, believe it or not, is you're trying to make a decision, you get that phone call, that, somebody calls and, you need money for something, and somebody just says, I had the sense I should, just give you money, So those things do happen, but that's not the norm. That's not our normal experience. If you're like me, you have these decisions that need to be made, and you go, well, I've got 2 choices, 5 choices, whatever it is, and I don't know what to do. So it's difficult to try to figure that out. And a lot of times, making those decisions is more subtle than that billboard or that flashing sign, right? It's sometimes making a list of pros and cons and understanding what those are and weighing those out a little bit. Subtle, it could be a kind of a general feeling, a general gist. Which way am I kind of leaning towards, of these decisions? You can get a better direction when you've discussed with a trusted advisor or maybe a small group of friends that you trust. So those can all be much more subtle ways of making that decision. And the thing I think that happens, though, is, and I've done it, we can all get paralyzed because I don't know what God's will is. I can't move. So I don't know what God's will is. And we wait until there's a crystal clear answer. And unfortunately, it doesn't come that way. And I think what happens is we miss opportunities because we've been waiting. We've been kind of in this holding pattern where we've needed to make decisions. Now, there's a lot of different decisions with a lot of different time frames. Certain decisions take a long time to put together. Other decisions are quicker. Certain decisions have time frames. So it's hard to just generally lump everything in, but it's when a decision has to get made. Even a decision of the initial direction about things. We have to move. And if we don't, we can really miss opportunities sometimes if we don't move. So, the question gets asked, so what do we do? How can we better determine what God's will is? I mean, we're not God. We never will be. But He does give us guidance, and He wants us to have some level of confidence moving forward. It's not necessarily confidence in us, though. It's confidence in Him. So I think the first most important thing about knowing what we should do next, knowing these decisions, is walk with Him daily. Spend time in prayer. Don't just spit out stuff. Don't just do a bunch of readings. You need to listen. You need to be there. I mean, us as Catholics, we have such wonderful things we can plug into. We have the Mass. We have confession. We have adoration, which is just a great place to go to be able to walk with the Lord. Just sit with Him. Just listen. There's times I'll go to adoration and I bring stuff to do. There's other times I will just sit and just listen and just be. And that goes a long way, especially because my mind does not stop. My brain the entire time, and I overthink about absolutely everything. So just walk with Him. And I think that's the first point. And if we're walking with Him, it's going to help us to see more clearly what the choice is. I think it's also important. I think there's a lot of people that just make decisions on their own. Just, this sounds good, I'm going to just go do this. And we all need people we can talk to. Even if we think we know the right decision, I do that. I have a spiritual director who, a number of different times, I'll text him and I'll just say, hey, you have a couple minutes to talk? And he'll call me back and I'll be able to review something. Even if I'm fairly certain what the answer should be, I just want another person to bounce it off of. So, one good trusted advisor, somebody who's got a little bit more wisdom than you or in that field, in that area, is extremely helpful. Small group of friends who you trust, good peer group that you trust, I think is a good way to go. I think the problem also is there are people that go from either not talking about it to anybody to talking about it with everybody, and they're not always the right people. I talked to 20 people about it. Well, now you're getting mixed messages, and there's all kinds of people in all kinds of different walks of life, and you're going to get some interesting information back from that. So I think it's important, though, one good trusted advisor, a few trusted advisors, people who you know their lifestyle, you know their will, you know their choices, you know what the direction they're going and that they're walking themselves with God. And then I think sometimes what you need to do is decide. Sometimes you got to just make a decision. And so you pick a choice. And I know the question that people ask, because we're all perfectionists and we're all overly scrupulous, is what if I make the wrong choice? Yeah, that's a tough one. I fight with that one all the time. I had discussions with Karen sometimes where we've made a decision. I forget what the decision was, but it was a case where we made a decision. At some point later, it looked like that was the wrong decision. It was maybe weeks or months or whatever it was. And I said, Karen, I don't think it was the wrong decision. I think it was the right decision at the right time. And now is time for us to make another decision. We need to look at something else. So I think that's part of it, is I think you make a decision, you trust. We're not trusting in us. We're trusting that the Lord has a plan for us. And we move forward. We just start moving forward. Now, the hope is if we're walking with the Lord, He's going to take us, and if we're aimed this way, He's going to bring us back to where we should be aimed. And it's always a lot easier to help redirect something that's in motion than it is to start something moving. So very rarely will God kind of get behind us and push hard to make us go do something. But He will help redirect us, especially if we're walking with Him daily. We have a relationship with Him. And it's not always about getting it right. It's not always about, I did exactly the right thing. Look at that. Because we can then start taking the credit for that. Look at how well I did. Look at the decision that I made. It's about trusting that God's got a plan for us and that we're at least in a spot where we're doing the best we can to try to interpret. God's ways are so much bigger than ours, but He at least gives us different inclinations, different thoughts, friends, advisors, people, guidelines of some things that we can do. And, sometimes making that decision isn't always easy and it takes risks. But if we're walking with Him, it's a very calculated risk. And in my opinion, even though things have been hard, there's been a lot of challenges in my 50 some odd years, He's never let me down. And I've never felt like God has abandoned me, even if things have gotten difficult. So, how do we know God's will? Most important thing is to spend time with Him, to listen, and to talk to those around us who are also listening, so that they can help us make a decision going forward. If you can, please like, subscribe, share, and comment, and I'll see you at the next one.